Hello, and thanks for joining us again on the Signature Show. I'm Vin Martin Obiora Ilo. Today on our program, we'll be focusing on the controversy or the new attention on the Oronsaye report. Of course, you will remember that about 12 or more years ago, that report was completed and submitted to the government of Goodluck Jonathan. But one thing led to another, and that report was not acted on. When the Buhari government came, they made attempts. It still did not yield any result. But now we have the President, Tinubu government saying, we want to implement the Oronsaye report. And it has brought up a lot of controversy. Labour says it's going to lead to retrenchment. Government says no, it's going to lead to a more effective civil service bureaucracy. Of course, the report talks about merging ministries, collapsing or removing some ministries, but it doesn't look like the controversy will come to an end. So today we have two Nigerians who should know. First is Professor Jude Denta, a professor of governance and public administration at the Enugu University of Technology. He was a former ASU chairman at ESUT. We also have Fidelis Ede, former president of the Civil Service Union of Nigeria. And of course, we'll go to the streets of Enugu to bring you the opinion of ordinary Nigerians as they weigh in into this debate about the Oronsaye report. Also on our program today, we'll be talking to veteran broadcaster and banker Ogie Eboigbe, who recently turned 70 and came out with a book, Epa Don't Come. But first on the show today, let's go to Enugu, where Professor Dan Nwachukwu, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of University of Nigeria Enugu campus, had his inaugural lecture, which brought a lot of academics, to one roof in Enugu in a lecture entitled Cardiovascular System and Hibiscus Subdarifer, No One Should Put Asunder. Well, that whole grammar is one thing you know, Zobo. We'll come to that.
We have to understand what marriage is. Marriage, simply put, is the union of two people as partners in a personal relationship. Oxford is the cardiovascular system and indeed our body can develop a personal relationship or marriage, if you like, with any agent, food or drink that improves its function. All of us here knows what to eat and your body will accept it and function normally. Today, the cardiovascular system have found a bride, and that bride is hibiscus subdarifer.
Our research efforts in unveiling the anti-hypertensive ability of hibiscus subdarifer, which we call Zobo in Nigerian descent. Unfortunately, what we used for our studies was the same concentration as the locally produced Zobo. And we found out that it exerted significant antihypertensive effect, in some cases even higher than the normal standard antihypertensive drug that we use. And we also did combination therapy combined it with other antihypertensive agents and found it very useful. And more importantly, what is significant in this is that this Zobo is within us. It's very cheap and it does not have any side effect compared to other known antihypertensive agents. So the raw materials is just buying Zobo, prepare it under hygienic condition, boil water, put it, and when you boil, you allow it to stand, then sieve it and drink. It may have a sour taste, but we do not encourage people adding things like pineapple, sugars, in order to make it sweet. Because once you do that, you are diluting or reducing its antihypertensive effectiveness.
The lecture, as far as I'm concerned, is two-dimensional. One on health grounds. In fact, more than that, the other one academic, then the third one economic. economic in the sense that we can also begin to use what God has given us to look for money. Maybe because God has given us everything in abundance in this country, we try to neglect the simple things God has given us in our environment. Therefore, what we are saying is that we should begin to look at all this pure water production, all this data, and incorporate Zobo production so as to make money out of it.
I'm impressed with him for so many reasons. For being a fine academic, he rose from lecturer one, became a full professor. Not only that, did very well in university administration. You see, I'm going to give a valedictory lecture, and the topic is role of tertiary education in national development. He has helped to develop himself. He was the head of department. He was a dean. Now he's deputy vice chancellor. Is there any reason why I should not be happy? Actually be a vice chancellor without having to give you an inaugural lecture. You have to announce that the professor and the whole world will know it, the university will know it, and they look at you and they demand a lot of things from you. Comportment, academia, impact on national development. So I encourage, like he has already announced it, that I told him, I gave him a marching order, go and deliver it. And he did, and he's happy. And now he's taking it a notch higher. That's why they say that, you see, you have to be careful with succession. Somebody who can carry your vision forward. You can see all of them. I'm not saying it, but they say they owe one or two things to me. I employed him. I urged him on. I imported him. I know what I'm doing.
The Oronsaye report was submitted about 12 years ago. Let's bring you a background report on that very, very important report.
The Nigerian Public Service, as contained in Section 27791 of the Nigerian Constitution, now captured in Section 169 of the 1999 Constitution, encompasses the civil service, ministerial departments, statutory corporations, and parastatals. The public service is created to ensure that policies and programs of government are carried out in an efficient manner at any point in time because of its perpetual nature despite changes in government. It is to achieve this aim that former President Goodluck Jonathan in 2011 constituted the Steve Oronsaye panel to identify inadequacies in the country's public service and prefer measures for greater efficiency. The report was submitted to the administration in 2012, while the white paper was released in 2014 but was never implemented. The last administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, after tinkering with the white paper, released its own version in August of 2022, but never had it implemented. Just like he did with the issue of removal of fuel subsidy and the floating of the exchange rate of the naira. President Bola Tinubu has again taken the bold step and has decided to go ahead to implement the report. The Federal Executive Council on Monday, February 26, not only approved the implementation of the recommendations of the Steve Oronsaye report, but went ahead to constitute an 8-member committee headed by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, with a mandate to see its implementation within a period of 12 weeks. The government says the implementation of the policy involves merging, subsuming, and scrapping of agencies with similar functions. The report, which came out as an 800-page document that recommended the scrapping and merging of 220 out of existing 541 government agencies, if implemented, will likely cause more than 100 heads of agencies and parastatals to lose their jobs. It recommended the reduction of statutory agencies from 263 to 161, as well as abolition of 38 agencies, the merger of 52, and reversion of 14 to departments and ministries. It also proposed the management audit of 89 agencies, capturing biometric features of staff as well as discontinuation of government funding of professional bodies and consuls. There have been mixed reactions to the announcement. Labour Party candidate in the last presidential election, Peter Obi, while welcoming the decision as one way of making governance efficient, cost-effective and productive, however, advised governments not to rush to implement the report, bearing in mind that civil servants would mostly be affected. The issues being thrown up by the exercise, despite government assurances on the contrary, include how to deal with those likely to be thrown into the labor market as a result of the exercise, as well as the effect on productivity and efficiency and reduction in the cost of governance.
That was our background report on the Oronsaye report. And let's go to our first interview on the program today. And we have Professor Jude Udenta, Professor of Governance and Public Administration at the Enugu State University of Science and Technology. And I started by asking him, what was his take on the government position to implement this report now?
Yeah, thank you. First, about coming too late, I do not think so. Because whatever is good will remain good. Because 14 years, yes, is a lot of time. But when we look at the goal of the Stephen Oronsaye report, which is about enhancing efficiency and then restructuring, then that becomes the focus. It's never too late to talk of efficiency. It's never too late to talk of restructuring or reorganization. These were the things that led to that particular report. Yes, maybe for political exigency, particularly because some of you that are in politics, you understand that sometimes people don't have the will. There's what is called the will, the political will to take some risks. And that happened to Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. Being a good man, when the report came to him, and following the 2011 crisis, so he couldn't enter into that mayhem at that particular time. Then he continued to wait through until he left. Buhari himself came in, and we know Buhari and his own systems. And that's how, even, there was a white paper of 2014. And then Buhari came and wrote the second white paper, 2020, 2022. But still, nothing happened. So I do not think it is like coming too late. The question is, are we really ready? Because there's a man called Chukwemeka Odumegwu Dim, Dike Diorama, one of them. He says, he once said, like in 1982, that we prefer posturing to action. The question I have now is, are we sure that we are not posturing? Because if we are not posturing, then let us see it. Because the issue is, we want to cut the cost of administration. That's what we are being told. We want to cut the cost of administration. And is it true that we want to really cut the cost of administration?
Well, that's something we find out in the coming weeks and months. But you are very at home with some of the suggestions in the Oronsaye report.
Okay.
And from what I know, it will mean that some ministries will be merged, some will be scrapped, a lot of rejigging in the entire system. What kind of impact is it going to have? But also remember that in our country, when you are doing something, people are going to read other meanings to it. What are the implications of doing this now?
People are looking at, people are talking of job losses. That's what people are talking about. I am not looking at that particular angle because it is not true. I have been in the public service since 1989. And under the military, from 1990 to 1994, they came up with this idea of reorganization, this kind of thing. And I want to use my own university, ESUT then, after the creation of Enugu State. The military administrator first told us to reduce the number of departments. So we had public administration, business administration, marketing and supply, and CRD in one department. So I'm trying to say something. Now we have these 4 departments, almost 5, in one department, under Mr. Udaya. So there was no HOD public administration, there was no HOD business administration, there was no HOD marketing, there was no HOD CRD. Are we together? So you have only one HOD. So what I'm trying to drive at is that we are talking of elite losses. The biggest problem of Nigeria, because when we're talking of job losses, yes, some people are not going to be HODs. Because for every HOD, you have to give him maintenance, what do we call it? There's some money.
Allowance, yeah?
Allowance. You have to have that on a revenue. You have to have that allowance for maintenance of the HOD. So instead of having 5 HODs, we now have 1 HOD.
Instead of having five ministers, we might have one or two.
Yeah, so because the truth of the matter is that the question you have just asked me is, throwing back at me, the issue is, are we sincere about it? So what we need to do is first, let us do what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. So what is good for this country? If we want to maintain this country and get it to work,
okay,
we have to make sacrifice.
Okay, Prof, we're going to talk about the burden of political offices and all that.
Yes.
But let's go back to the Oronsaye report, which deals more with the public service. I mean, the civil servants and what have you, and all that.
Yes.
Won't what we are trying to do, won't it be like throwing the baby with the bath water? Because some argue that collapsing all this in a bid to save money may impede the efficiency of some of these agencies. More bureaucracy.
No. No, why I say no is that I just looked at some of those ministries. Like, there was a ministry of senior secondary school education. Why should there be a ministry or something like that, an agency in charge of senior secondary education, when we have a ministry of education? So we are going to have ministry of primary school education. No, there should be units. These should work as units under the central ministry. Because there's nothing new. You know, when we were in primary school, we didn't have this, what we call social media. But there's still other information and communication. When we were in primary school, we used to have Commissioner for Information and Communication. And whatever we do, it is still under information and communication. Maybe there is a little bit of some more complexity. But these things could be handled under particular units under this ministry. But I had to rush up to the issue of the political office holders, because that is, we are talking about reducing costs. I'm not against removing some HODs, removing some of these people. But if we really want to enter into what we are looking at, which is cultural administration, we should be sincere to ourselves.
So in other words, you're suggesting that part of the problem is that the top heaviness of administration and governance
in Nigeria. So why should we have three ministers in the ministry? Simply to respect what they call the constitution. They want to respect the constitution, having three ministers in the ministry. And you know this better than myself, because you have a minister from, and minister for.
I don't know about minister from, but I know.
So the problem we have is we are not being sincere to the nation to present this particular structure called Nigeria.
How do you react to what I've heard some people say, even politicians say that, look, we don't think that this government is really serious about implementing the Oronsaye report. They want to divert attention from the challenges of the poverty, the hunger in the country, the inflation. Is it something you think is true?
It's not impossible. Thinking is the right of every human being. I cannot stop the mind from, moving around, musing and all those things. But the issue is, I don't know how someone would give what he does not have. But that's by the way.
What do you mean, someone giving what they don't have?
Let me leave it there for now. Because if I say there's a place I push it to, it becomes another problem. But what I'm trying to say is, I do not know. I don't want to say that they're not serious. What is important is, I want to see them go ahead and implement the report. And when they're going to implement it, let them implement it in concrete terms, so that we see that they are sincere. It is time that it's going to bear out whether they are sincere or not sincere. For me, for now, let us give them the benefit of the doubt that they are being sincere. But if they don't start from the top, everything must start from the top. If they don't start from the top and reduce the cost of governance, then they just want to kill the poor.
Is the Oronsaye report the most important thing to face now, or should the government be doing some other things to turn the country around?
They should do Oronsaye report. They should do other things to turn the economy around. If they want to do Oronsaye report, we cannot take it away from them. That's why they are the government. But they should also do other things. I just looked at, because when I look at the fact that they said NNPC and what do you call it? And Dangote refineries, they don't have crude. I was just asking myself, what is happening to this economy? They don't have crude to refine. And every day we are hearing about people stealing our coal, stealing everything from Nigeria and disappearing to other parts of the world. And we continue to ask yourself, are we human beings? Biafra refined oil, including aviation fuel, 67 to 1970. They were doing all those things. They produced their own weapons. We have people who produce AK-47 in Nigeria. People produce it here. Why can't we, the military-industrial complex in Nigeria, make use of those good hands in the north, in the west, in the east? There are people that are like that. Why do we have to bring them and shoot them? We have people that are doing, whatever refinery. Yes, we call it crude. Why don't you and get them working and get them improved? Everything that is done through marketing. Somebody must support what we are doing. So we have so much to do. Babani says so much to say. So we have so much to do. We are not yet taking off. That's my problem. So Oronsaye may be good, but if it becomes the first step towards 1,000 miles, that will be good. But I hope it's going to be the first step. But instead of that, we are not talking of which state to win 2027. We are not looking at these realities. And part of it is that because the masses are not looking like in Kano. The masses of Nigeria must borrow sense from Kano. When they borrow sense from Kano, then everybody is going to be afraid. Both of us used to read, there's this man that was popular in our secondary school days as a novel. One of them was Want to Stay Alive, $50,000. Hardly chase. We have to begin to think of this idea of, I'm a Catholic. Today we had to. Were they seeing him as a human being? Because making him a slave was also like sending him to death. So it's about our people. Are we ready to live or die? And for me, the subnational states must begin to wake up to their responsibilities. But they cannot wake up if the people, the population, the individuals, the citizens do not understand that they are citizens. We are not subjects. The problem with Nigeria is that instead of seeing ourselves as citizens, we are seeing ourselves as subjects. And that's subject mentality is our problem.
So finally, what will you leave for the people, the government, as we look at what government wants to do with this report?
For me, I don't think there's anything too bad about this report. What is the masses, then that becomes a problem. But if they really face the cost of administration, you will now know the meaning of what they are doing, because it is possible. All those people, if you move people from federal safety and EFCC, federal safety to the police, and EFCC to the police, and other things, IPC to the police, it's not a problem. There will be units. For this things have been under the police all these years. Public Complaints Commission, maybe to the police. You get particular units that will be solving those problems under the particular office, so that we reduce that. But that's not even the problem of Nigeria. That is not the problem of Nigeria, because removing those areas will just remove some elite from their offices. But the question is, are we ready for the work that is to be done?
I must thank you for coming on our show.
We thank God.
Former chairman of ASU, Enugu State University of Science and Technology, and also a professor of governance and public administration, Professor Jude Udenta. Let's now go to the streets of Enugu and hear what they are saying about this report.
Well, there's been a lot of duplications in Nigerian ministries and departments and interministerial affairs. Then the report is a welcome development. It is good to do the right thing at the right time. We've been talking about cutting the cost of governance, because it's part of the problem we have in this country. There are a lot of duplications. Money is spent for nothing in most cases. People just take money anyhow. Every ministry has some expenditure to make. But then if they are merged, that means that one is being made instead of 2 or 3 or 4. And that means that the cost of governance is being cut. The only thing is that people are afraid that some people will lose their job. But people shouldn't lose their job because there are appropriate places they should be placed. And that is what should be done.
About the Oronsaye report, it's overdue. In fact, if this government can implement it, that will be very wonderful. Very good, but let them not do it in a hurry. Like in the case of subsidy, God, no. In the case of Oronsaye report, take at least 1 year.
For me, basically, I think what this current government is trying to do with that report is good. It's good in the sense that if you look at some of the agencies of the federal government that will have, a good number of them are almost like doing the same thing, performing the same role, the same services. And in some of all these agencies also, you go there and you discover that they're not doing anything. You know, so I think now that there is hardship everywhere, the cost of living is high, even cost of running government is also on the high side. I think this is the right time to give that report a thought. You know, implement that report and see how at least it could pan out.
It is a very nice idea to bring the totality of these people to a unison voice. But the issue there is, can it remedy the situation of Nigeria corruption indeed? The level of Nigeria corruption has gone to alarming proportion and it's become unbearable. So you are trying to bring all these parastatals and you want to make them together. I've not seen any meaningful thing that we can achieve unless they came out with a blueprint to tell us this is what they have in mind.
You know, the president is a politician. That's one thing. And politicians are never sincere. That's one thing I understand. How do you think you can cut down governance by merging these people? Where will those workers go? If you merge them, where will those workers go? When he's telling you that nobody will lose his job, that's a blatant lie. People are going to lose their job because you cannot pack all of them. You cannot pack all of them into one minister. And that was why they were separated. All I know is that he's playing politics. He's just playing politics and there is nothing working out of it.
I believe some of them are good. Some ministries are supposed to be merged. Some are not supposed to.
Example?
It's just like that when you talk of all these communication firms like media industries like NTA, Radio Nigeria, VON, I believe they should go under Federal Broadcasting of Nigeria, as they said. At least let them answer one name. It doesn't mean anything. There's no problem. But there are some, like the Pilgrimage Commission that are talking about. Some of them are good, some of them are not good. But my own problem is, if they are doing it, let them do it sincerely.
Nigerians have been clamoring for the implementation of that report ever since the committee came up with the report. I think it is a welcome development. Implementing the report will go a long way in saving Nigeria so many things, to save costs. And contrary to what so many people are saying, that it will lead to job loss, I don't think so. The people that will be affected, I think, are just the politicians, maybe the members of the boards of all those parastatals that will now be collapsed into one board, the DGs and all that. Because when you merge three of them, you only have one DG, you have one board that will be overseeing all those things. But the career civil servants are there, and they will continue to be there. It won't affect them in any way.
Enugu residents weighing in on the Oronsaye report. And time for our second interview, where we bring in Comrade Fidelis, the former president of the Civil Service Union of Nigeria. And I want you to speak directly to the issue that has been a point of disagreement between government and labor, job losses if this happens. From what you know about the report, is it something that will make workers lose their jobs?
Well, you know what?
Is their fear justified?
It ought to be justified in principle. But if you also take into context that the Oronsaye report was, Oronsaye committee was 2012.
Yes.
And attempts by previous governments to want to implement aspects. I think what we needed to do now is to find out what is it government at this point is implementing. And I think the proper phrasing ought to be implementing the white paper on the Oronsaye report, because I'm aware that the report was not entirely accepted by government.
There had been a white paper.
Yeah. So it is the white paper that will be able to speak to the fears, which normally, once you are talking about implementation of reports that has to do with scrapping up agencies, there will be job losses. And if you recall in the reports, part of what was amazing, sadly, was that in that report, the committee discovered we had about 53 or thereabout agencies that were funded through the budgetary processes but had no enabling acts. So in law, the question would be, how could an agency come into existence and even be drawing from the treasury, which is budget provision, when there is no act establishing it? That is one aspect. Now, if you say the agency operated illegally, what happens to the actions that it has consummated, which could include over time? One of which is disemployment of, because now you are dealing with contractual legal issues. It's not just about labor. It's about the right of somebody who have gained employment genuinely, because it is not his business. Once government is in situ, you believe that all the needful things have been done. That is one aspect. I was in Abuja, and I'm aware that parts of the implementation approved in the last federal ESCO talked about merger. So if it's about merging certain agencies, I do not see strict loss of job there. But I'm not even looking at the fears of labor. I am looking at whether, if you look at the public service, the way it is constituted, do we have enough manpower? The government will always talk about retrenchment.
Let me take you over something you said, but whether government is sure that there's more than enough manpower for what they want to do. You suggested something like that. And I'm saying that the challenge here in Nigeria is that even the manpower produces less than what they're supposed to produce. People go to the offices and be sleeping. Some don't come to work at all. Some people have offices 6 months, they've not shown up. and they're taking salary from government. So yes, we have these people, but they're not even given what they have to give to sustain the bureaucracy of government.
I think you are
Is
right.
that not a problem?
No, it's
Big
a
problem.
No, it's a problem because we've looked at public administration from the point of output. In 1945, when Professor Reed and co. tried, there was a proposal to see whether the Marshall Plan, Marshall Plan, could be applied for the challenges in African countries. It was very clear that what Africa needed was development administration, not public administration. They needed to develop
Can you break it down for us?
No, that's what I'm trying to do. They needed to develop the requisite scale that ought to provide public administration. For instance, when you talk about salary, just the fine point you raised now, all you hear is about recurrence. And it is just like GDP, you match it. But the question is how much of that is going into training? Mind you, that the public service is contracts of service, different from contracts for service. The contract for service is like you pay a plumber who already comes with a skill, or you go see a doctor who already has a skill in his private, or somebody contracts you, Signature TV, he already knows you have the skill, you are coming to cover an event and what have you. That is not how the public service is structured. This public service is contract of service. You are expected to be trained because it is futuristic. It's not as if all the tasks and challenges are laid out. So the point I'm making is that we still practice the patronage system. Part of what Udoji discovered in his report is that traditional components seems to be dominant in the civil service of Nigeria in terms of favoritism, in terms of who recommends you and what have you. And that was part of what Maritala, though it was a very surgical approach that didn't the reform or retrenchment of 1975 that tried to throw away the bad water and the baby. So the point I'm making is that the publics, even the Oronsaye report we are talking about, before that, has under Obasanjo, did we not try monetization? Where almost the junior cadre was fizzled out, where officers now had to be paid for their drivers, for, government no longer rent accommodation, and what has changed? What savings did government make from that?
Let's go back and talk about how government and labor can synergize to make the best of the implementation of the report, the Oronsaye report. How can they work together?
Well, I do not think the government, you see, the role of labor is not to want to take over the role of government. Part of what we have also missed is that in Nigeria, there is this confusion.
The labor can be an obstruction.
No, I know. There is this confusion as to what government represents. Because when you are talking about the Oronsaye report, you are talking about federal public servants. You are not talking about the entirety of government in Nigeria, which means at that point, government is treated as an employer. That is just the point. You also see the same thing in wage system, where, for instance, minimum wage in Nigeria have been converted to mean salary adjustments as envisaged in the Constitution. No. Minimum wage is a wage set for employers of certain category. The minimum which any employer within that category ought not to go down, which is level 1, step 1. But you discover we have converted it to mean wage adjustment, that each time it comes, it's used to adjust wages up to the point of even permanent secretaries. It's an aberration. It is not a standard. It's not seen anywhere in the world. If you also take the role of the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Labor ought to be an umpire. And that is why when he plays that role in the private sector, he plays it efficiently. But in the public sector, the Ministry of Labor now assumed to represent an employer, that is the federal government.
And become biased.
That's the point. So the point I'm making is that when I was in the system, I remember this encounter. That was when Iwineda was governor. And they said they were going to retrench workers. It was difficult for me, but I was able to get my people to buy into it. I said, I'm not going to oppose retrenchment because that is the exclusive right of the employer. But that what we will ensue is that the man must meet the condition for the retrenchment. And when we sat down and analyzed the law and computed what he needed to pay in order to retrench, because it has to be first in, last out, last in, first out. The man discovered that he needed the allocation for about 3-4 months. And that was how that matter ended. If I'm in the system today, I will not oppose retrenchment. Because with what is happening, if you get the government to pay the people their full entitlements, any worker that cannot start another meaningful life. Because the truth of the matter is that if you have done 50 years, you know at 60 you exist, or you have done 30 years, you know at 35 you exist, you will discover that the difference, which is less than 30% of your salary, is what you still spend transporting yourself. So why not take what you are entitled to and draw that as your pension? I don't know. So at times you discover that lack of information and the fact that we're all always instinctive and the emotive, we want to play to the gallery. People don't get the communication. After all, do people not voluntarily retire? I retired in 2011 after I lost the seat of NLC because I didn't see how, after being president of Civil Service Union, to come to Enugu and fit into grade level 14 job. And today I'm happier for it. So what I mean is that we must communicate to the workers' option. I remembered an incident under Mike Torrey that was under the military. It has to do with Daily Star. When we confronted government, I said, no, it's your right to want to retrench, but these are the conditions.
For you to retrench?
Exactly. By the time we came out, governments also gave an option for those who want to transfer to Ministry of Information and those who wanted to leave. And I remember then that we will always insist that government must fund parastatal to the extent of paying salary. So this thing is that labor leaders must also attune themselves to ILO standards. I'm not a labor leader that will, if I come here and say, no, you don't have the right to lock this place. But if you are the employer that decides that the workers will not run, mind you that if you are the one that have closed here, their salary will be running because you didn't provide job for them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we all need to do some work, especially the labor leaders. And that's the point where I would like to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The program continues. I've been speaking with Comrade Fidelis Ede, former president of the Nigerian Civil Service Union. And the title I like so much now is that he's a farmer. Thank you for coming.
My honor. Yeah.
Not too long ago, veteran broadcaster and banker Ogie Eboigbe clocked 70. Friends, family, colleagues, and well-wishers joined him in Lagos to celebrate that great occasion. At the event, Ogie presented a book, Epa Don Come. Epa joined me via Zoom to talk about the birthday, how it feels to be 70, and his new book.
Well, like many of our friends say, age is just a number, it's a figure. We always thank God that you get to those top figures. It's up to God to decide how far you go, but you can also help yourself by trying to do the right things to make sure that your body is strong and your mind too will be strong. So we thank God for everything. Sometimes I feel like I'm 30 and 40 and try to do the things that 30 and 40 do, but once in a while, you get home and start rubbing something hot on your back to soften the whole thing. So that's how it feels.
There was so much you were celebrating on your birthday, especially the anniversary of your blog and, of course, the publication of a compilation of some of your thoughts on your blog. Tell me what prompted you to move it away from the blog and put it in a book.
Okay. Well, the blog has been on for about 5 years. And while a lot of people go there, I also feel that there are quite a lot of people who are still traditional in their use of the media. Even though they have the phone in their hand, they can take it anywhere they want. Some people still read books. I like to read books too. And I decided that, look, instead of inviting everybody to go on the blog all the time, let's also put the book in their hand. So wherever they are, at their bedside, in the living room, in the office, they can take a peek once in a while and read something interesting. And this time too, we had to select some what we consider to be very interesting articles on the blog. There are thousands of articles there now. In fact, it also ran into thousands of pages. So we had to try and select something like about 500 pages. It took a while to put it in place. But we think that if you read the book, you enjoy those articles because they come with a lot of wisdom, a lot of analysis of past, present, and future events. That was the main reason. Put the book in your hand anytime, any day.
Look at that book. It's a commentary on Nigeria. You know, all
and elsewhere.
And elsewhere.
The whole world too, yeah.
Yes, you know, different sectors. I mean, different segments. Yes. What is your message? I mean, you spend time sharing your thoughts with Nigerians and non-Nigerians. What is the objective? What drives you?
The first thing is history. We tend to forget history and the fact that we can actually also develop solutions from history, from what has happened in the past. We try to analyze our articles using our experience and wisdom that we have learned from occurrences, happenstances in the past. There's hardly anything that hasn't happened in the past. Everybody talk about technology and all that. A lot of things that propelled us to start using technology came from the past. So when we analyze different issues and different events, we try to think back, see what has happened, when it happened, how it will have been a pointer to what is going to happen now, and then suggest solutions, recommendations as to how we can make life better for all of us as Nigerians, as human beings, and also for the other people who are not as fortunate as us, to make life better for them so that everybody will be happy. That's basically the reason. The different sections, some sections are very serious. I'm a human interest person. Whatever happened, like some of our friends who provided some snapshots, they said, okay, it tends to take some issues, even if they are serious, it dives into it, try to make it easier for people to read, people to understand. So it comes out of your experience, the wisdom you have learned from all the things that one has done in the past.
70, and in the last couple of years, you've watched our great country, you know, wobble, leap, run, crawl, and all that. When you look back, are you satisfied that this was the Nigeria you were dreaming of, maybe when you were just 35, 40?
I don't think you mean that question. Because even you will agree that this is not the Nigeria all of us, young, old, rich, poor, educated, non-educated, this is not the Nigeria that we all of, even just a few years back. It is not. I was fortunate to attend, primary school, secondary school, different tertiary institutions in different places. I always pride myself that I'm the only person I know that I worked in 6 levels of government: city council, local government, state government, then 2 international governments in the US and Canada. And the experience we had those days was showing us that, this is a great country. We can make it better. Some of us decided not to go outside Nigeria because we felt all the promises were here. A lot of our friends went abroad, studied, stayed there. Some came back and went back again. And especially now, what is going on? Everybody is trying to even go out. Even those who are my age are going out. At least they have their kids there and all that, and they stay back there. We thought that this would not be the case at that time. All hope should not be lost. There should still be some people who have the wisdom, the understanding to make the right decisions, to make this country better for all of us. With all the resources we have, we thought we would be in El Dorado by now. That's the truth.
I must congratulate you, Oge, for all these landmarks. But before we round it off and wish you many more years, how do you see the future? You saw one about 40 years ago, and now you're saying it wasn't what you were looking forward to. What future do you see? Because one beautiful thing I like is that from day one, you always wanted elder before your name, and now you're really one. So, so what kind of future are you looking, are you envisaging for our country? And what do you think we should do, to get to that, even if it's not El Dorado, near El Dorado?
Well, they say a nation gets the rulers and government it deserves. There's a lack of education, a lot of ignorance amongst the Nigerian people as to who to elect to run us at various levels. Everything is monetized these days. It shouldn't be the case. And it's ignorance that is responsible. There are actually also some people who seem to be making sure that people are ignorant and people are not educated enough to choose good leaders. We need to go back to the basics. We, in broadcasting like you, we need to educate people on how to make their votes count, how to even vote, especially, to ensure that it is the people who have their in mind, at heart, that are voted into the various offices at all levels to run the government at those same levels. I'm not even, I'm talking about you talk about associations and different groups that are the lower levels, even without media people, to elect those who are going to run our affairs is also a problem with us. So we need to go back to basics and educate ourselves so we can educate the general public on how to make our country a better place. And how do we do that? By electing good people, good leaders who will lead us in the path of peace and progress. There is hope. I don't want to give up hope. There must be hope. I mean, whoever doesn't have hope, it means the person is gone completely. Our country is still ahead of a few countries, even though we are at bottom of the ladder in many indices, but there must still be hope for many of us. And let's take it from our profession, broadcasting. Let's start teaching people, let's start educating people and letting them know what to do when the right time comes.
Elder, thanks again for joining us, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
You too. You too. Take care.
That was veteran broadcaster Oge Eboigbe talking to me about being 70 and his new book, EPA Don't Come. And that's how we draw the curtain on our show today. I'm Vin Martin Obiora Ilo, thanking you for being part of it and telling you that you can watch this program again and our other programs if you go to signaturetv.org or if you reach us on our social media handles. Until next week, thanks for watching.